Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Occult Perspectives. If you are new to this channel, what I do on here is I talk about different esoteric research subjects, such as the Tree of Life, Freemasonry, Kabbalah, archangels, you name it. We talk about all different kinds of, we cover many different subjects on here. So it's good to be back. And today we are going to do a little bit of reading from Manly P. Hall's The Secret Teachings of All Ages. Some of it I'm going to read you myself. Other parts I'm going to play an audiobook, and I will pause throughout and add little tidbits of my own, understanding here and there. So let's go ahead and just jump right into it. This is Relaxing the Elder Scrolls Music, is the name of the YouTube video. If you are wondering what this music is from, looks like it's mostly a Morrowind playlist. Morrowind has some of my favorite music ever. It has really beautiful music. So I figured I would play some of this in accompaniment to going over this book. So depending on which version of this book you have, there's a preface. There's actually two prefaces in this. Then there's a foreword, and then there's another preface. Wow. Okay, so I am only going to read the foreword in the book because the foreword has a little bit of like esoteric stuff in it. The other ones are mostly just about how the book was written, like thanking different people about the book. So let's get into it. And the foreword is written by Henry L. Drake, Vice President of the Philosophical Research Society, and it was written in 1975. It is an honor to have been invited to write this foreword. My aim shall be to set forth briefly what a careful study of this important volume over a period of years has meant to me. Associations of men and women bound together by oaths and obligations into esoteric fraternities have descended from the earliest times and bear witness to a natural inclination to perpetuate doctrines which lead to the good of mankind. With the growth of social consciousness, these secret societies became the custodians of the highest cultural concepts, which is true because, as you see, life moves on and on and on, but there's certain groups, all different kinds of mysteries, tradition groups, which are basically custodians, or they hold on to this secret knowledge and they impart its wisdom to the coming generations. Each generation is able to receive this repository of information. Their initiation rites were symbolic pageantries, suitable to inspire veneration for the divine mysteries and admiration for the powers of nature and God. So basically, to get a glimpse of or realize that there's something within yourself that is much more grandiose than what the mundane reality might seem to hold within it. There's something more there. There's something a lot more hidden within it. Most of the mythologies of classical nations were originally rituals of secret societies, and it is a mistake to assume that earlier cultures accepted as literal the elaborate theology and legendary found in their traditions. So the earliest peoples, they would have known, they understood that these stories basically are reflections of aspects within ourselves. We hold all these different archetypes within ourselves, as I've reiterated on this channel many, many times. Historically, the secret societies were closely identified with state religions. Basic knowledge was believed to have been bestowed by the gods in a remote age. The esoteric philosophies have always been taught by means of secret organizations to which candidates were admitted only after appropriate preparation and initiatory rites. These spiritual brotherhoods of scholars, sages, and mystics have flourished among all peoples, ancient and modern, and in all parts of the world. So basically, certain people have been selected throughout time, and they have to undergo prerequisite things in order to open themselves up properly to the cosmic influences, that if they're going to be a teacher among men, They have to be able to open themselves up and become like an empty cup, a vessel which can be filled essentially with the divine spirit. And then that spirit can be transmitted to mankind as a whole. In the program of the mysteries, each individual must grow into the comprehension of truth. Before he could be entrusted with the divine powers of mind and will, he must accept knowledge as a responsibility to his creator and his world, rather than as an opportunity for the advancement of personal ambitions. So what they mean by an individual must grow into the comprehension of truth, basically at the end of the day, you are discovering through your own journey that you basically are and always have been source, yet you're always on an eternal journey to discover yourself even more and even deeper and even further. What you're on a journey to discover is actually like the true essence of who and what you are, not just this material flesh, not just the things that society may say you are, but there's a part of you that's infinite and it's immortal and it lasts forever. It's always been there. And that's the deeper aspect and truth to all of it that we're trying to dig through when we study the mysteries. So just wanted to add that in there. The masters of the mysteries taught The masters of the mysteries taught secret practices and disciplines by which the properly qualified disciples could develop the potent abilities latent within the soul, and so come into conscious communication with spiritual realities. So that's the thing. Sometimes these spiritual realities, they're not going to completely be able to be comprehended until you devote certain, practices, and, you're able to apply insights and meditation and things such as that. Even something as basic as the fourfold breath, if you really sit there and concentrate on your breath and simply close your eyes and focus on that rhythm, and then eventually get your body into a state where it's automatically doing it and you're able to empty your mind and you can stay in that calm, peaceful, like realm of awareness or consciousness, you'll notice that the whole reality around you starts to become more harmonious. It starts to change. You start to flow more with ease through your experience. That's the world at large is mostly full of discordant energy. There's a lot of discordant energy, a lot of inverted and perverted energy going on too. So that creates like a disruption in this field of what could be, flowing divine bliss. But we have to attain as a whole, as a collective, we have to attain a certain level of consciousness before we see the reflection of that on a massive scale. So mostly it's going to be isolated to certain individuals who are like working on themselves and working on their own practice that are really going to be able to totally experience the beauty and bliss of that level of awareness or consciousness. Initiates of the philosophical societies came to be regarded as possessing extraordinary faculties and powers, and it almost like seemingly magical, but at the end of the day, this is just our body's natural powers, really. It's our bodies have always had these capabilities and the ability to do these things, but it's been just buried over by so many other aspects of life. It gets forgotten until we bring that forth again, those aspects of ourself. They enjoyed the special favor of the divinities, performed miracles, and were worthy of the title twice born, for they had come to second birth from the womb of the mysteries. So yes, it is a rebirth process that really does take place. And in that way, it's like you've already been through the stage of death, but you've been resurrected, and you realize that the fact that the spirit has allowed you to stay here and remain in this experience means that you're, to a certain degree, you're meant to spread this illumination and light and knowledge to others, so far as others are like receptive to receiving it, as of this, at this point in time. I do plan on this being a little bit longer of a video too. Might make it into about an hour. So I recommend, getting comfortable, grab your favorite beverage. I've got some coffee here. Make sure to always balance it with water. I always try to make sure I'm rehydrating myself. as I'm drinking coffee, because coffee can actually dehydrate you a bit. So definitely want to be balancing that out with some H2O. Most definitely. Let's continue. Let's get through this forward, shall we? And then we can get to the actual audiobook. These adepts/philosophers were the truly evolved human beings. Most of the arts and sciences which enrich the modern world were discovered, developed, and in many instances perfected by these initiate philosophers and priests. And the thing is, too, a lot of inventions and things of that nature come to adepts through dreams and things like that. So you have to be able to open yourself up somewhat psychically to these other realms of existence, and that's how ideas get unfolded to us. Because remember, it starts in the world of archetypes, and then it moves to the world of thoughts, and then you have emotions, and then you have the physical manifestation. Scholarship was recognized as the pursuit most suitable to the abilities of man. But scholarship was always the means, never the end. And see, in today's world, we get so caught up on numbers and calculations, and we think that we're so smart, but even from like humans' abilities to calculate things, it's only going to get you so far. Just hit 1133 in the video. That was really cool. 1133. Yeah, scholarship and like study, you know, in Masonry, they say the study of the 7 liberal arts and sciences. These are all just, they aren't the ends in and of themselves. They're a means by which you may actually attain higher levels of consciousness, which can't really be attained in formal education. There's just things that you learn in formal education that are going to like set you up for being able to receive certain messages. And really a lot of this, the divine information, it's going to come more from like the right brain and being able to be more going within and being able to meditate and practice that feminine energy. But we also need the intellectual faculties and capacities of the left brain hemisphere as well. So it's going to ultimately be a marriage of these two hemispheres, if you will. But yeah, the modern education system, it's not really about learning. It's not really about attaining like consciousness. It's about keeping you in a loop of logic, of only like logical thinking and numbers and calculating, but never understanding the deeper essence or the deeper purpose behind as to why you do that, you know? Which is to basically come into a deeper understanding of your true self, your true essence, which is ultimately a source. The end of the sacred sciences was the abstraction of the human soul from bondage to the senses and its preparation to receive within itself the light of vast truths. Some men are naturally suited to higher learning, for they possess integrity of motive, the patience of effort, and the vision of ends. And that's really what prudence is, and its true definition is being able to look down the line, you know, and be able to say to yourself, what's actually going to benefit me in the long run. You know, being able to see things to the end of the path and say, is this path for me? Is that path for me? And then being prudent and making a decision based upon that. So some men are naturally suited to higher learning, for they possess integrity of motive, the patience of effort, and the vision of ends. These labored toward the soul's improvement and championed enlightened progress above other considerations. Those of different opinion opposed the mystery schools. And I mean, honestly, the mystery schools is what we truly would want to establish on the, you know, on this planet, when the society has reached the level of consciousness that when it can finally be that vessel for that light, you know. It was inevitable that the initiates of the mystery should unite themselves against the forces seeking their extinction. Thus, while the secret doctrine with its body of disciples functioned more or less openly in ancient society, it later passed almost completely from public view. basically had to go underground, as we all know. This circumstance should not be interpreted as a decline of plan or purpose. The esoteric schools remained as a powerful force for the regeneration of human institutions. Those who do not understand the spiritual sciences question their use of unusual symbols, myths, and figures employed to conceal the essential teachings. So yeah, you see this a lot, especially in modern society, where people just think all of this is evil. They're not really seeing the deeper underlying message or purpose of these things. And then they get caught up in like superstitions and, you know, wanting to destroy knowledge and all that sort of stuff. So you don't want to get stuck in that that narrow-mindedness. Let it be remembered that these clouds, quote, were no part of the original doctrine, but were made necessary by intolerance and bigotry. The use of indirect communication was based entirely upon practical considerations. To remain unknown was the best way to prevent a repetition of the disaster which occurred to the Knights Templar. The, quote, veils which concealed the arcana of the mysteries were not employed to cover ignorance, but to protect wisdom. And in Europe, it was protected for 1,000 years. Well, hello, Bella. You gonna show everybody your tail? Huh? Do I need to let you out of the room? Is that what you're wanting? The secrets of the mysteries are obviously metaphysical, philosophical, and esoteric, and relate to processes taking place within the fields of the human psyche during the practice of the spiritual disciplines. So yeah, when you're doing like meditations and things of that nature, all the things that you study, metaphysics, philosophies, esoteric stuff, you know, it relates to and it gives you deeper insight into the processes which take place within the fields of human psyche during your spiritual practices. Discipleship ends in the attainment of an inner capacity suitable for the realization of the esoteric tradition. The disciplines, by expanding consciousness, give the initiate practical mastery over that which is learned and constant awareness as to the proper use of higher learning. So I always envision like, you know, almost like an elvish society. Like if you've ever watched The Lord of the Rings, if you see like Rivendell and a lot of these elvish cities, all the people, like, they're really like calculated in how they move, and they move with a lot of finesse, and they're just really, elves are like higher beings. They've developed like a higher consciousness. So the society or culture would really move from that higher space rather than being motivated by a lot of like what we could say denser or more carnal purposes. All right, Bella, you need out? You need out? I'm letting you out if you need to go out. Once again, though, it's always about balance. You know, we're human beings, so we're meant to experience like a lot of physical, quote unquote, more carnal-based things. But it should always be balanced with like conscious awareness. So, like meeting on that conscious level rather than just rather than residing in just the purely animalistic consciousness. Should really seek to merge or marry the higher and the lower principles to attain really something that's like beyond the duality itself. It goes beyond. And that's where ultimate source is going to come from, a place that's really beyond all dualities or quote unquote opposites that we can even perceive or see or think of, you know. If these sacred academies imparted only scientific, intellectual, ethical, or cultural doctrines somewhat in advance of their time, they could produce only scholars. The initiates of the esoteric tradition were never regarded merely as brilliant intellectuals. From white-walled Memphis to rock-hewn Elora, they were honored as practicing a higher dimension of essential knowledge. History preserves the records of numerous persons, living in different times and in various places, who have exhibited a knowledge and skill which cannot be explained according to present standards of erudition. We cannot ignore the testimonies of such learned men as Pythagoras, Buddha, and Plotinus. Many of the noblest members of our race have expressed their profound admiration for the esoteric institutions flourishing in their own times. Not to recognize the esoteric sciences is to disregard most. Hopefully that'll help you hear me a little bit better if I move the phone closer to me. Sorry if you have not been able to. Many of the noblest members of our race have expressed their profound admiration for the esoteric institutions flourishing in their own times. Not to recognize the esoteric sciences is to disregard most that has contributed to the advancement and improvement of the human state during the last 5,000 years. There being a divine order of learning superior to mundane knowledge, and its being available, the time is most appropriate for the further restoration of this sacred tradition. And see, this guy's, he wrote this back in 1975. So there's, we're in 2025 now. It's a new year. So there's going to be a lot more people, learning about these sacred sciences and expanding their minds and consciousness. And, it's a beautiful thing to be able for this stuff to be able to finally come forward in a way, in the right way. Hopefully the right people, find this information. Because I think there is a hunger for this type of stuff out there. Adeptship is the state of complete spiritual maturity so far as is possible to a member of the human family. Yeah, I mean, true adeptship, that's something that I haven't even come close to. There's so much that I have to work on as a human, There's a lot I have to work on, but I have also really come a long way. And I feel like there's many times I could have been destroyed. I could have been, taken out of this existence, but to be able to still be here and, in 2025, things are good, things are turning around. 2024 was a really tough year, but I have a lot of hope within myself that, I'm going to be able to meet some cool new people and, basically through mutual love and appreciation and understanding of this type of stuff, we can really manifest like a beautiful heaven here on earth and really experience the reality that we want to experience. I do see a lot of beautiful things coming, but 2024 was a really rough year where we had to truly let go of a lot of things. Deficient in nothing necessary to a life of wisdom, the adept is sufficient to his own needs and capable of determining that course of personal action most likely to contribute to enlightenment. So basically, he becomes a conduit to just basically better the world. He doesn't need much, he or she. There's a lot, probably more female adepts out there, I would say, because I think females, for the most part, they have a lot more connectedness to the heart center. We as males, a lot of the time, we have a lot of that hunter-gatherer type, almost like primal instincts within us, like that inner warrior. And that warrior, it's that fiery passion. It's a good thing to have, but it also has to be transmuted into being gentleness and kindness and all of those sorts of things. The adepts foreshadow the state of mankind when it will have attained the full release of its faculties and powers. I've seen this, in visions and stuff many, many times. I think I have many connections to other worlds that have already reached this level of society, and I think a lot of us come to Earth to help grow the civilization and help, even if it's just one person at a time, we're transmitting seeds of knowledge, awareness, and understanding to others of the human race. The adept is therefore the truly evolved of our species. Accordingly, the adepts considered together as the citizens of an invisible empire of the philosophic elect constitute the heroic elder brothers, the custodians and protectors of humanity, as the interpreters of the mysteries. They are the true educators and illuminators. As the redeemed, the servants of divine purpose, they comprise a powerful, creative, and directive force in the world. I think we all know people who, remind us of that. The science of life is therefore the supreme science and the art of living. the finest of the arts. There have always been truth seekers willing to acknowledge the sovereignty of the eternal over the temporal. These have dedicated themselves to the mastery of life and have perpetuated from generation to generation the knowledge and skill they accumulated. This body of essential knowledge is the esoteric tradition. The institutions which perpetuated this tradition are the mystery schools, and the graduates of these schools are the adepts. This volume reveals that the lore and legendary of the world, the scriptures and sacred books, and the great philosophical systems all tell the same story. Human ambition may produce the tyrant. Divine aspiration will produce the adept. This, then, seems to me to be the significant message of Manly P. Hall's encyclopedic tome. So my sincere wish is that this contribution by our friend may mean as much in your life as it has had in mine. Henry L. Drake, and as I already said, Vice President of the Philosophical Research Society. That was written in 1975. So let's get into the only chapter I'm going to be able to cover in this book is chapter 1, which is the introduction, but I'm not going to be able to get all the way through the introduction. The introduction itself is actually really long, but I think what's kind of cool about this introduction is that it talks about philosophy, and it talks about all these different ways of viewing the universe and viewing the world, and different philosophers, like what their views are on divinity, essentially. So let's go ahead and get into it. I'm gonna try to balance this music with the video so we can hear the music while we hear the audiobook as well. So hopefully it works out well.
Introduction. Philosophy is the science of estimating values. The superiority of any state or substance over another is determined by philosophy, by assigning a position of primary importance to what remains.
So kind of what he's saying here at the beginning of this chapter. So philosophy is defined as the science of estimating values. It's the superiority of any state or substance over another. Is determined by philosophy. So this means that there is a hierarchy of values. Something that's kind of misconstrued, especially in like the New Age community, is that like, everyone is exactly the same, like we're all one consciousness. Yes, that is true. We are all interconnected. It all comes from the same, we all come from source. But what we have to understand is that while we all have the same rights under natural law, like we are equal under natural law, we all have the same rights, we should all have the same, basically access to the same things. But we're not all equal, as in we all have different skills. Each person's different at a different thing. So Michael Jordan is obviously, me and Michael Jordan are not equal when it comes to being able to play basketball. Michael Jordan's a lot better at basketball than I am, but we are equal, as in we are equal under creation, as in that we have the same rights under natural law as, intelligent, free beings. We have free will in this reality. So philosophy is the science of estimating values, which can put yourself in alignment with source, and then or yourself. It's getting in alignment with your true self. Now, there's going to be values or variables in life which are going to not be in, alignment with who you truly are, or it's not even going to help you go on a path where your soul could truly take you. It may take you the complete opposite way. And not to say that there's not value that can be gained there, not to say that there's not valuable lessons you could learn from going down that path. You have to have some kind of hierarchy of values when it comes to, who do you allow within your circle of people? What kind of information or influences do you allow to come into your reality? And then philosophy is the science of being able to estimate these values. The superiority of any state or substance over another is determined by this art or science of philosophy. So it's important to remember that. So you assign a position of primary importance to what remains when all that is secondary has been removed. Philosophy thus becomes the true index of priority or emphasis in the realm of speculative thought. So really, principles, when we look at principles, what does a principle actually mean? A principle is the most important thing. So when you take away all the outer extra, we could say pageantry of things, what is the core essence that remains? That's what they're talking about when we talk about philosophy. It's the underlying, or quote unquote occult, the hidden forces which move the rest of reality, if you will. Here we go. The mission of philosophy is to establish the relation of manifested things to their invisible ultimate cause or nature, quote unquote, or to word it a different way, the underlying causal factors. All right, let's continue the audiobook.
When all that is secondary has been removed, philosophy thus becomes the true index of priority or emphasis in the realm of speculative thought. The mission of philosophy, a priori, is to establish the relation of manifested things to their invisible ultimate cause or nature. Philosophy, writes Sir William Hamilton, has been defined as the science of things divine and human, and of the causes in which they are contained. Cicero. The science of effects by their causes. Hobbes. The science of sufficient reasons.
So here he's reading off different definitions from different philosophers, what their definition of philosophy is.
Leibniz. The science of things possible, inasmuch as they are possible. Wolff. The science of things evidently deduced from first principles. Descartes. The science of truths, sensible and abstract. De Candolle. The application of reason to its legitimate objects. Tennemann. The science of the relations of all knowledge to the necessary ends of human reason. Kant. The science of the original form of the ego or mental self. Krug. The science of sciences. Fichte. The science of the absolute. Von Schelling. The science of the absolute indifference of the ideal and real. Von Schelling. Or the identity of identity and non-identity. Hegel. See lectures on metaphysics and logic. The 6 headings under which the disciplines of philosophy are commonly classified are: metaphysics, which deals with such abstract subjects as cosmology, theology, and the nature of being; logic, which deals with the laws governing rational thinking, or, as it has been called, the doctrine of fallacies; ethics, which is the science of morality, individual responsibility, and character, concerned chiefly with an effort to determine the nature of good; psychology, which is devoted to investigation and classification of those forms of phenomena referable to a mental origin; epistemology, which is the science concerned primarily with the nature of knowledge itself, and the question of whether it may exist in an absolute form; and aesthetics, which is the science of the nature of and the reactions awakened by the beautiful, the harmonious, the elegant, and the noble.
Okay, so that was the 6 headings under which the disciplines of philosophy are commonly classified. So metaphysics, logic, ethics, psychology, epistemology, and aesthetics, which were just defined there. Let's continue the audiobook.
Plato regarded philosophy as the greatest good ever imparted by divinity to man. In the 20th century, however, it has become a ponderous and complicated structure of arbitrary and irreconcilable notions, yet each substantiated by almost incontestable logic. The lofty theorems of the old academy, which Iamblichus likened to the nectar and ambrosia of the gods, have been so adulterated by opinion, which Heraclitus declared to be a falling sickness of the mind, that the heavenly mead would now be quite unrecognizable to this great Neoplatonist. Convincing evidence of the increasing superficiality of modern scientific and philosophic thought is its persistent drift towards materialism. When the great astronomer Laplace was asked by Napoleon why he had not mentioned God in his Traité de la Mécanique Céleste, the mathematician naively replied, "Sire, I had no need for that hypothesis." In his treatise on...
So basically, the original knowledge, divine knowledge, it's really simple. And it's something that's profound, yet it's simple, but it's been added to like all these different layers have basically concealed the divine light, quote unquote. So it's almost more about pulling back all these different layers, which modern society's kind of like added on all these illusory layers, if you will, to the original pure truth, pure doctrine of divinity, in a sense. There's a picture of Plato here, a little illustration, like statue. I'll go ahead and read that because I don't know if they cover that in the audiobook. Plato's real name was Aristocles. When his father brought him to study with Socrates, the great skeptic declared that on the previous night he had dreamed of a white swan, which was an omen that his new disciple was to become one of the world's illumined. There is a tradition that the immortal Plato was sold as a slave by the king of Sicily. So, interesting side note there. Let's go ahead and continue the audiobook.
Atheism. Sir Francis Bacon tersely summarizes the situation thus: "A little philosophy inclineth man's mind to atheism."
How that started was in his treatise on atheism, Sir Francis Bacon tersely summarizes, "A little philosophy inclineth man's mind to atheism.
But depth in philosophy bringeth men's minds about to religion." The Metaphysics of Aristotle opens with these words: "All men naturally desire to know." To satisfy this common urge, the unfolding human intellect has explored the extremities of imaginable space without and the extremities of imaginable self within, seeking to estimate the relationship between the one and the all, the effect and the cause, nature and the groundwork of nature, the mind and the source of the mind, the spirit and the substance of the spirit, the illusion and the reality.
So there's always this dualistic concept going on. You see this with like Freemasonry and other mystery schools. There's always this idea of as within, so without. The inner and the outer. The one and the all, the one and the reflection. Effect and cause, nature and the groundwork of nature, the mind and the source of the mind, the spirit and the substance of the spirit, the illusion and the reality. The occulted, and in other words, like the occulted reality or the hidden reality and the manifested reality, which we see before us. So there's always this dualistic, thing going on. I always like to refer to it as the ultimate paradox. It is, but it isn't, so to speak.
An ancient philosopher once said, "He who has not even a knowledge of common things is a brute among men. He who has an accurate knowledge of human concerns alone is a man among brutes. But he who knows all that can be known by intellectual energy is a god among men." Man's status in the natural world is determined, therefore, by the quality of his thinking. He whose mind is enslaved to his bestial instincts is philosophically not superior to the brute. He whose rational faculties ponder human affairs is a man, and he whose intellect is elevated to the consideration of divine realities is already a demigod, for his being partakes of the luminosity with which his reason has brought him into proximity. In his encomium of the science of sciences, Cicero was led to exclaim, "O philosophy, life's guide, O searcher, out of virtue and expeller of vices, what could we and every age of men have been without thee? Thou hast produced cities, thou hast called men scattered about into the social enjoyment of life. In this age, the word philosophy has little meaning unless accompanied.
Yeah, because if you do think about it real hard, it is kind of scary to think about what humanity or what mankind could be if it didn't have like a guiding principle, if there weren't like these higher concepts ingrained into us. We might have all just like killed each other by now, you know, over like materialistic wants, desires, needs, hungers. You know, there's that always a primal instinct to want to sometimes conquer, things of that nature. You know, we all have those aspects within ourselves, but if we can like truly transmute that and use that drive to like work towards a life's goal, or to help us to like meet and manifest people in our lives that are at that same level of understanding. Basically what they're talking about here: thou hast produced cities, thou hast called men scattered about into the social enjoyment of life. So bringing about beings to work together so that they can produce a society which allows us to basically all enjoy the fruits of life. That way we're not just selfishly like basically consuming it all for ourselves and trying to create an empire that's based purely on physical things. When you understand the spirit or the essence of things, you really want to share that abundance with other people as much as you can, as much as it is in your power to do so, and as much as it is able to be received, or people are able to be receptive to those influences. So let's continue.
By some other qualifying term. The body of philosophy has been broken up into numerous isms, more or less antagonistic, which have become so concerned with the effort to disprove each other's fallacies that the sublimer issues of divine order and human...
Here, I'll reread that real quick. In this age, the word philosophy has little meaning unless it's accompanied by some other qualifying term. The body of philosophy has been broken up into numerous isms, more or less antagonistic, which have become so concerned with the effort to disprove each other's fallacies that the sublimer issues of divine order and human destiny have suffered deplorable neglect.
Human destiny have suffered deplorable neglect. The ideal function of philosophy is to serve as the stabilizing influence in human thought. By virtue of its intrinsic nature, it should prevent man from ever establishing unreasonable codes of life. Philosophers themselves, however, have frustrated the ends of philosophy by exceeding in their wool-gathering those untrained minds whom they are supposed to lead in the straight and narrow path of rational thinking. To list and classify any but the more important of the now recognized schools of philosophy is beyond the space limitations of this volume. The vast area of speculation covered by philosophy will be appreciated best after a brief consideration of a few of the outstanding systems of philosophic discipline which have swayed the world of thought during the last 26 centuries. The Greek school of philosophy had its inception with the 7 immortalized thinkers upon whom was first conferred the appellation of Sophos, the wise.
Interesting, that number 7, it popped up earlier today in my studies too. We see the number 7 everywhere. The 7 chakras, the 7 candlesticks, the 7 planets. It goes on and on.
According to Diogenes Laertius, these were Thales, Solon, Chilon, Pittacus, Bias, Cleobulus, and Periander. Water was conceived by Thales to be the primal principle or element upon which the earth floated like a ship, and earthquakes were the result of disturbances in this universal sea. Since Thales was an Ionian, the school perpetuating his tenets became known as the Ionic. He died in 546 BC and was succeeded by Anaximander, who in turn was followed by Anaximenes, Anaxagoras, and Archelos, with whom the Ionic school ended.
So that's interesting. He sees the primordial element, or the primal principle or element, to be water. And he said the earth floated like a ship, upon which the earth floated like a ship. Interesting. And earthquakes were the result of disturbances in this universal sea. So that's kind of the interesting.
Anaximander, differing from his master Thales, declared measureless and indefinable infinity to be the principle from which all things were generated. Anaximenes asserted air to be the first element of the universe, that souls, and even the deity itself, were composed of it.
So this other guy, he sees air as that primordial element. So, as I was saying before, you're gonna see a lot of different people's philosophers' viewpoints within this introduction.
Anaxagoras, whose doctrine savors of atomism, held God to be an infinite, self-moving mind, that this divine infinite mind, not enclosed in any body, is the efficient cause of all things. Out of the infinite matter consisting of similar parts, everything being made according to its species by the divine mind, who, when all things were at first confusedly mingled together, came and reduced them to order.
So, okay, this is really interesting, a really interesting viewpoint. So Anaxagoras held God to be basically an infinite mind that moves through everything, through all of creation. So literally all of us have this divine or original mind moving or flowing through us. This is an interesting way to look at really God experiencing itself through the one divine mind, and through the experiences and the incarnations of each and every one of us. So God is an infinite self-moving mind. This divine infinite mind, not enclosed in any body, is the efficient cause of all things. Out of the infinite matter consisting of similar parts, everything being made according to its species by the divine mind, who, when all things were at first confusedly mingled together, came and reduced them to order. So this is kind of a different approach here towards the end. It's saying that at first, when everything is like unified, because the top, beyond the tree of life, is the three negative veils of existence, and the Ein, or the Ayin, or however you say it, the Ain, it's called the no thing, but it's really the pure vacuum of spirit. From this interpretation, it says all things were at first confusedly mingled together, as in like it couldn't figure itself out. So that's kind of a different way to look at it, rather than seeing it as like divine perfection or ultimate unity, which totally does have everything figured out. So it says here, everything being made according to its species by the divine mind, who, when all things were at first confusedly mingled together, came and reduced them to order. So basically putting everything into their component parts. And then let's go ahead and continue the audiobook.
Archelos declared the principle of all things to be twofold: mind, which was incorporeal, and air, which was corporeal, the rarefaction and condensation of the latter resulting in fire and water respectively.
Okay, let's go ahead and however you pronounce this Archelos declared the principle of all things to be twofold: mind, which was incorporeal. And if I'm not mistaken, the word incorporeal basically means non-physical, right? Not composed of matter, having no material existence. Yep. So the mind is incorporeal. So literally, the brain itself is not even what produces consciousness. This incorporeal mind basically like takes over the brain, in a sense. It's this one mind of God moving through all of creation or existence. So he says the mind is incorporeal, and then air is corporeal. So air is quote unquote physical. Or it relates to a person's body as opposed to their spirit. Or it's tangible. Corporeal is tangible. And then it says the rarefaction and condensation of the latter resulting in fire and water respectively. So air basically leads to the elements of fire and water. I know what condensation means, but rarefaction, not sure about that word. Hold on. diminution in the density of something, especially air or a gas, the lessening of density. So it's basically a reduction in the size, in the density. So you're taking away the density of something and basically breaking it down into these other two parts. Condensation, that's like the actual, like when the water falls, right? That is the rain. Yeah, where water vapor becomes a liquid. It is the reverse action of evaporation, where the water goes up, where a liquid becomes a vapor. Condensation happens one of two ways. The air is cooled to its dew point, or it becomes so saturated with water vapor that it cannot hold any more water. So as you can see, like spirituality and science, they really go, like they flow into each other. They really go hand in hand, and that seems to have kind of been forgotten a lot by more modern ways of thinking. So let's continue. I'm not going to go too much longer in this chapter. We're already at 51 minutes, so I hope that those of you who have stuck around for this whole video, that you do enjoy this, because I really do enjoy like looking into things like this and really breaking down the concepts. That way they can really be understood in a more like practical and straightforward manner. Instead of just absorbing like so much information at one time, it's really best to just take in little bits at a time and really break them down, so they can be totally understood and integrated.
The stars were conceived by Archelaus to be burning iron places. Heraclitus, who lived 536 to force to a species by the divine mind, who, when all things were at first confusedly mingled together, came and reduced them to order.
Okay, I went back a little far, but that's
declared
okay.
The principle of all things to be twofold: mind, which was incorporeal, and air, which was corporeal, the rarefaction and condensation of the latter resulting in fire and water respectively. The stars were conceived by Archelaus to be burning iron places. Heraclitus, who lived 536 to 470 BC, and is sometimes included in the...
Okay, that was weird. The stars were conceived by Archelaus, or however you say his name, to be burning iron plates. I don't really understand what he's saying by that. Burning iron plates? Does anybody else know what that means? Why would you equate the stars to burning iron plates? I'm gonna Google that, because that makes no sense to me. And it's always important, guys, to never get like caught up on like one philosopher or, one teacher. We should all be learning from like different influences and different, getting information from different resources. And then we can, like, through that process, we can use discernment, to figure out like what's more, what's real, quote unquote, versus what isn't. And it's important to remember that our minds, are creating our experience. So it's important to remember, hit for 53:33 right when I said that, that we are creating our experiences. So it's important to focus on the right things and everything. Yeah, I don't know what he's talking about. What happens when a star burns iron? Iron is the most stable form of nuclear matter, and there is no energy to be gained by burning it to any heavier element. Without any source of heat to balance the gravity, the iron core collapses until it reaches nuclear densities. Did the iron in our blood come from stars? I'm just looking on Google right now. Every atom of oxygen in our lungs, of carbon in our muscles, of calcium in our bones, of iron in our blood was created inside a star before Earth was born. That's super interesting. I'd heard that we're all stardust, but I didn't really realize how deep that went. For about me flames the pentagram, right? And within me shines the six-rayed star. Hydrogen and helium, the lightest elements were produced in the Big Bang. Almost all of the other heavier elements were produced inside stars. And I see the Big Bang as like essentially basically source or the masculine energy. Well, really it's the primordial dark feminine, let there be light. The Big Bang, really you could say it's like a giant cosmic orgasm if you want to. That's definitely one way of looking at the Big Bang. Who's to know that it's maybe there were grander, more macrocosmic processes, and the Big Bang was just more on a microcosmic level closer to us? Or maybe it was the origin of the whole thing. Hell, who knows? When you start talking about concepts like this, it's really hard to know. You know, the only way you're ever going to really know is really becoming one with the infinite and realizing that you're transcendent and that you're not just this reality or this lifetime, but what you are exists throughout infinite space and time. You are infinite. You are infinite awareness at the end of the day. All right, so let's continue. Let's just go a little bit longer. I don't want to go too much longer here.
The Ionic school, in his Doctrine of Change and Eternal Flux, asserted fire to be the first element, and also the state into which the world would ultimately be reabsorbed. The soul of the world he regarded as an exhalation from its humid parts, and he declared the ebb and flow of the sea to be caused by the sun.
So yeah, the whole universe can be seen as like the inhale and the exhale, or the exhale and the inhale, however you want to look at that, the breath of life. Heraclitus said in his Doctrine of Change and Eternal Flux, asserted fire to be the first element, and also the state into which the world would ultimately be reabsorbed. I've heard that before, that the world will end in fire, the pure fire of divine spirit, you know. And even in the Bible, it talks about, you know, the world was destroyed by water last time, and then it's going to be destroyed ultimately by the element of fire, be reabsorbed into the divine mind, so to speak, however you imagine that to play out in your mind.
After Pythagoras of Samos, its founder, the Italic or Pythagorean school numbers among its most distinguished representatives Empedocles, Epicharmus, Archytas, Alcmaeon, Hippasus, Philolaus, and Eudoxus.
Some fancy names.
Pythagoras, 580 to 500 BC, conceived mathematics to be the most sacred and exact of all the sciences, and demanded of all who came to him for study a familiarity with arithmetic, music, astronomy, and geometry. He laid special emphasis upon the philosophic life as a prerequisite to wisdom.
I believe what he mentioned there, you have what's called the trivium, and then you have the quadrivium, and I think the quadrivium is arithmetic, music, astronomy, and geometry. And the trivium is more like grammar, rhetoric, and logic. So those four, the quadrivium and the trivium combined together, would make the 7 liberal arts and sciences, for those of you who are interested in Freemasonry. And really, the 7 liberal arts and sciences are just a good thing to understand in general.
Pythagoras was one of the first teachers to establish a community wherein all the members were of mutual assistance to one another in the common attainment of the higher sciences.
So this idea of having a community of people, he laid special emphasis upon the philosophic life as a prerequisite to wisdom. Pythagoras was one of the first teachers to establish a community wherein all the members were of mutual assistance to one another in the common attainment of the higher sciences. So imagine being like in a group or a collective or a certain tribe of people where everyone's kind of together, is working towards higher understanding, higher consciousness, and higher awareness. Now, we see a lot of the times there are, of course, groups which kind of fall into, there ends up being like a power play. Somebody kind of wants to rule or control the group or whatever. And there should always be like a hierarchy of things going on, you know, but basically the highest person in the hierarchy should be the one who is the one who's serving the most, the one who's actually working the hardest for the other people in the community. That's usually how a proper hierarchy works. It's like, really, people think that having a high, a high position or a high office means like all these fancy cool things, but no, it really just means you're more of the ultimate servant. It really just means you have more work before you to do for your community of people. You are expected, to produce more good works for the world, in a sense.
He also introduced the discipline of retrospection as essential to the development of the spiritual mind. Pythagoreanism may be summarized as a system of metaphysical speculation concerning the relationships between numbers and the causal agencies of existence. This school also first expounded the theory of celestial harmonies, or the music of the spheres.
There was a time I was meditating in the woods once, and it didn't happen too many times. It happened a couple times. This was years ago, but I swear there was just this music playing, like nature itself, among the trees, among the forest. It was almost this transmission of like a harmonious like sound. Almost reminded me of kind of like some of the binaural beats or like the 432 hertz you would listen to on YouTube. Kind of similar to that, but it wasn't like really audible. I wasn't actually hearing it, but I could like hear it within my own inner being. I don't know if that's just something else I was picking up on, or if I truly did tap into the music of the spheres at that moment in time. But just a super interesting thing to add to that, to this passage, as far as my own personal experience.
John Rayoclin said of Pythagoras that he taught nothing to his disciples before the discipline of silence, silence being the first rudiment of contemplation. In his Sophist, Aristotle credits Empedocles with the discovery of rhetoric. Both Pythagoras and Empedocles accepted the theory of transmigration, the latter saying, "A boy I was, then did a maid become, a plant, bird, fish, and in the vast sea swum."
So some really interesting things here. Silence is really the first thing you're taught in the mysteries. Anytime you join a mystery school or anything of that nature, the first lesson of the first degree is typically going to be silence, because when you're first starting out in your magical practices, when you're first learning to work with these cosmic forces, you're going to want to practice silence and be an observer rather than always projecting, or because the voice is a powerful thing. So through silence, you learn how you're able to kind of gather up energy, and you're able to gather up thoughts. And then when you do speak, it becomes that much more effective. You're able to transmute your world that much more powerfully when you do decide to end up speaking. Also, both Pythagoras and Empedocles, is that how you say it, accepted the idea of reincarnation. A boy I was, then did a maid become, a plant, bird, fish, and in the vast sea swum. So manifesting as different levels of life, different levels of being. And I don't know if this happens in more linear fashion, where you start from the more basic organisms and work your way up to humanity, and then you work your way beyond that to like the angelic hierarchies and consciousness, things of that nature. How does it all work? I don't truly know. I have inklings and ideas of, things I've experienced in past lives, but nothing real concrete. And we hit an hour, 3 minutes and 33. That was really cool right when I was saying that. So, all right, we're almost done here, and then I'll go ahead and wrap it up.
Archytas is credited with invention of the screw and the crane. Pleasure he declared to be a pestilence, because it was opposed to the temperance of the mind. He considered a man without deceit to be as rare as a fish without bones. The Eleatic sect was founded by Xenophony.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and end it there. In my version of the book, we're on page 17. This is considered a reader's edition, the version that I have, and it's paperback. I don't have a fancy hardback. I know there's some really fancy versions of this book out there, so definitely feel free to share like some pictures if you own a copy of The Secret Teachings of All Ages and it's a really cool edition. Make sure you share that if you would like to. Post a picture in the comments if you're able to do that. Okay. Alrighty, I will go ahead and end the video there. So I hope that you gain some knowledge or value from this video. And if you really resonate with what I teach and what I talk about on here, make sure to go out and check out my Patreon as well at Occult Perspectives. If I don't have a link for it in this video, I do have a link for it in other videos and the description of my YouTube channel. So I'll leave it there, everyone. I hope you have an amazing day or night wherever you are, and hopefully I will see you all again very soon. Until then, peace and blessings.